been in quite a few meetings. I'm like,
Yeah, concert meetings.
what's that?
Right, you've been in a lot of concert meetings.
Yes, a lot of concert meetings.
You ready?
We're ready.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the May 7th, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes, May 7, 2018, that's it.
I'll second. I guess I'm gonna have one.
Yeah, you're going to second that.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Next is the police report. Chief?
Okay, in April, the police department responded to 212 calls for service, including the following: the investigation of a theft in the 3600 block of Wagner Way at a new home construction site, and the arrest of an 18-year-old male and a juvenile female for theft after taking packages from porches in Buyer Station. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Sarah?
Is Wagner Way at 14?
No, Wagner Way is actually in, off of Augusta Drive in Buyer Station.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
A new street.
A new street.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mike.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. Next is the bills list. Tonight, we're looking to approve the township bill list in the amount of $235,285.13. The reimbursable bills list is excuse me, I'll get it ready, $58,797.70. And the subdivision utility plant bills list is $4,227.32. All three total $298,310.15.
I move that the board approve the bills list dated May 21st, 2018, total amount of $298,310.15.
And I'll second that. Any questions from the audience? Artie? Oh, I just assumed you had your hand up.
Sorry, can't help you tonight.
Just
I'll take his place.
Okay. Brian?
And this isn't a Bill's specifically thing. One of the issues, it complements in two areas. One is I noticed in the Bill's list, I got a response back from Erica that the French Creek bills that are in there, that we were able to go and take care of that without eminent domain, and that's a real win there. And it should make you happy, John. And the other one is that I had asked a few times here at the meetings about dirt disposal costs. And again, Erica got back to me. And last year, we were paying about $10.95 a ton. And this year, the numbers that we've got is like $5.20 a ton. And that's less than half of what we were paying last year. And compliments to the township staff for finding another vendor that is huge savings. And it would have been real money if this had been going on for a couple of years. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, good job, guys.
You are aware that the township staff that did that did not include Bernie, Mike, and I.
Yeah.
Just don't want to take credit. Sarah?
Could somebody explain the first thing he complimented you for avoiding eminent domain?
Sure.
Yes. Say that again?
I need to, just asking somebody to explain Brian to me.
You didn't have to do it.
I can comment on it. So with the easements needed for French Creek, we were going through that back and forth with the property owners. There was new counsel sought by the property owners. So when we were not able to come to terms with that easement, we had to go forward with the condemnation process. We were going through that filing, and while we were going through that filing, we were concurrently working with new counsel. And in that process, we came to terms on the easement, the value of the easement, $100, $50 for both easements needed. We came to terms with that, and then we revoked the request for the condemnation. So we have signed recorded easements in hand.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
exciting.
And the negotiations were actually with an estate, which was...
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that part.
You had a comment, Harriet?
No, I was just saying congratulations. That was.
Any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Next is the request for French Creek Conservation Trust Iron Tour donation. What was the amount in the past that we donated?
$1,000?
There's no motion in here.
No, I wasn't sure how you felt about it, so it's up
Oh.
to you, yeah.
Well, I think everybody knows how I feel about it.
Well, I just.
Are you gonna make the motion anyway?
So, did you put a motion in?
You want me to make a motion?
Yes, I will.
Not to make a donation?
No, I want you to make the motion to donate the $1,000.
All right, I make a motion to donate, well, we determined a price, $1,000
$1,000.
to French and Pickering Iron Tour.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all right,
See, you think you know the guy, and then you get him to vote for it. Make the motion.
all right.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Nay.
Just when you think you know a guy.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, good try, that's not gonna work.
Let's put it on when Bernie gets back in town.
No, you can't do that, no.
Yes, time.
That's not how it works. The motion was put forth, and the vote was taken.
And there was a tie.
And I would suggest that everybody donate what they feel they want to donate. I did last year, I donated myself to the Iron Tour. I think it's a great thing. I just don't think government should be involved in charity or other people's charity.
I understand, and I agree with you in a lot of cases. Put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Can you do it? Put it again? No, you can't, okay.
We're gonna have some fun. Next, we're having a presentation of the 2017 audit and financial statement presentation by the Carver County Authority. There's a microphone right there. All right. We must not have advertised this meeting, right, so they don't care about our...
Oh, yes.
Steve, you can just turn the microphone right at the top there. I didn't have that on. There you go, thanks.
Okay. My name is Steve Kutzlakis. I'm a partner with Barbara Gordon Company. I oversaw the audit of the township this past year. We conducted our audit in early February, and there's two types of reports that the township issues. One's called the annual audit and financial report, and one's called the financial statements. The first one, the annual audit and financial report, is a report that is used just for DCD reporting filing only. Commonly referred to as the DCD report. It is uploaded to DCD and it's due April 1st. That was done and submitted on a timely basis. Under this report, it's basically a cash basis report without footnote disclosures, and it's summarized. The data is summarized in the format that the DCD wants. The second type of report that the township issues is a set of financial statements that I think most people are used to seeing with statements and footnote disclosures. It is a cash basis report. This basically means you're showing your revenues when they're received and expenses when paid. It's not an accrual report, which is common practice. And this second report here is used by the township to meet your continuing disclosure requirements for the bond issue. We currently have two bonds that are outstanding, 2012 GOP bonds and then 2016. That's the purpose of that. Our responsibility as part of our audit is to plan and conduct our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the statements are fairly presented in accordance with the applicable standards. Based on our audit, we give what's called unmodified opinions, clean opinions. This basically means we feel that they are free of material statements. As part of our audit approach, we did review the township's internal controls over financial reporting for the purpose of planning our audit approach, but not for the purpose of giving an opinion on controls. The cycles that we look at are your receipts, disbursements, and payroll. Based on that review of the internal controls, there were no glaring deficiencies that we noted that we needed to bring to the attention of management. Overall, we feel the controls that were put in place are working as intended. One thing we'll point out from a financial standpoint, this past year, all of the township's funds experienced an increase in fund balance, with the exception of the liquid fuels fund. That's the state money you get every year for street improvements, which you're supposed to use that money. I believe last year a street project was not done, so you accumulated quite a bit of fund balance this last year. That money is mostly spent this year on approved street projects, so that makes sense. End of the year, the general fund ended the year with a fund balance of $2.25 million. Open Space Fund had $1.9 million fund balance. And then your other fund was the sewer fund, which ended the year with a fund balance of $1.1 $7 million, overall increases from the previous year. Some high-level overview.
I have a question. With all those numbers, do you think the township could afford a $1,000 donation to the Iron Tour?
Watch how you answer that.
Just fun in your mind. Any questions? John?
I have a few questions. I'm the accountant in the audience. It's John Elbridge, 1634 Hilltop Road. And some questions. The township financials ended up with a surplus of $576,000. And your audit wound up with a surplus of $478,000. $107,000 difference. And it looks to be in the area of transfers. Is that something that was, I hate to say it, beyond internal controls, but it seems like a big difference to, and usually it's way less.
Right, we don't look at the internal reports that are given out at the monthly meetings. I don't know. I don't have a frame of reference of what you're looking at.
John, you're speaking of the transfer from one year to the next? Like where we take some road money and we put it in this year's
Well, this
revenue?
is in the
and
general
then-
fund, it's not in the road budget.
Well, I know, but
Right.
where did we put that last year?
No, I don't think transferring money from one year to the other is really an accounting concept, is it?
Well, but if we put, it depends how it's done, because if you throw the money in as a revenue and then as an expense, and you don't spend the expense, I don't know how you look at that.
Well, and also for the
It's a
benefit.
transfer from a cash to a cash.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, for the benefit of Steve too, if you have some specific questions like that, to refer to the report so there's an understanding, we can certainly get time to go over that too. So proceed, but yeah, just to help out with that, because he doesn't have probably the same thing.
Okay. Another question, this is a general opinion question. In 2016, there was an excess net income of $829,000. In 2017, it was $478,000. And it builds up our reserve to $2.2 million. Do you think that's getting to be a high reserve? And one of the approaches here is that we're paying taxes and they're collecting it, but they're not using it, so we're getting nothing for our money. And there was one rule that we started, it was voted, I think, at one time, that the reserve would only be 30% of the revenue, the year's revenue, and that puts it at 51%. Do you have any comments about all that?
I know some townships set a certain fund balance level that they don't want to get to, and anything over they'll transfer to a capital projects fund or open space fund set aside for a certain purpose. That's something to consider. But really, it varies across the board, based on what each administration.
John, on that subject, on capital expenditures, I think we have the next 2 or 3 meetings, we're going to have discussions on spending some of that on improvements.
Well, the capital expenditures are just a regular expense for saving purposes. And that leads me to one possible question. There was $200,000 in capital expenditures for community. And I don't know if that was in the financial statement or your audit statement. Do you know what that would be for?
I know what that was. It had to be classified for community development, but it was open space. It was for the 16 years project for the donation. I think that's what it got. Because it has to fit a DCED label in that, the audit report to match all their municipalities, but that's what it is.
So our open fund expenditures don't show as open fund expenditures, they show as community.
In the financial statements they do, but in the audit submitted to DCED to look across the Commonwealth, you have to classify it. It's a little tricky.
So it
That's
stays
what
in
it is.
both places, as an
Yeah.
expense and as a capital expenditure for this audit purposes. On the financial statement, moving off the audit for the moment, one of the things I always look at, it says you have a column there that says original and final budget. And generally, they're never the same. it might pick one approved budget or something and go with that. And then where the township budget had revenue of $4,000,001, yours shows revenue of $3,000,009. And so our approved budget varies a little bit in presentation lines from what you do in your financial statements.
Who's got that 200,000?
Pardon?
Who's got that other 200,000, John?
Yeah, 150,000. But what they do, what it seems like you did in your audit statement, you moved that out of the revenue line and put it into a transfer line. And I don't know whether it gets confused, the general fund transfers to the sewer fund. But money, from a prior year, it looks like you show as a transfer, which you sort of said you shouldn't do that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't have the details in front of me.
Pardon?
I don't have the details of this report in front of me. Sorry. It's been-
Do you have your financial statement?
Yeah, I do, but we finished this up, back in March. It's been a while. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them there, and I can address them.
Because one of the points I want to make here is that the township also would put $200,000 into revenue, and it would just be to use the prior year's reserve.
Yeah, if something like that doesn't get shown up, doesn't show as a revenue again in the current year.
But it never can be shown that way in your audit, right?
Right, yeah.
So
Just use
it's
your fund balance, that's what it is, use your
I know
prior
what you're
reserve.
saying.
Yeah, and so it
Yeah,
seems
so sometimes it's
awkward.
balance the budget by saying they're gonna use so much X
Either-
dollars out of the reserves.
exactly.
Sometimes they'll show it as a revenue or in their budget
Right.
balance of it.
Right.
It's not really a revenue for financial statement purposes, it's.
Right, right.
Yeah, but it makes it difficult to follow these things.
Yeah.
And then I would go back to last November when in the liquid fuels, they put $200,000 of money from a prior year and for 1 month. And then the December report was never published, so you couldn't tell what happened at year end. There was never a year-end liquid fuels tax statement posted on the website. And I don't know whether, I think it would have been difficult to do and explain anyway. Okay, then I have some general comments, not necessarily related to the audit. I think our monthly statements that the township is doing is getting a decreasing in its quality. And for instance, we no longer get a month. We get year-to-date. And so you can't see what happened in the month of March or the month of, and there's funny things happen, like one of the things you notice in the February year-to-date, the police expenditures were $275,000. Year-to-date March, they were $274,000. And without the March month, you can't really trace what's going on there very well. I mean, you can subtract February from March, but then there's a whole lot of categories. And I gather that it was something in salaries, that there was some error somewhere.
That they worked for free that month?
Pardon?
That they worked for free that month? You said the cost year-to-date went down by $1,000
Yeah,
after
from
another
February to
month.
March. In February,
Okay.
the police budget was, expenditures were $275,000. In March, year-to-date, they were $274,000. But again, it's helpful to have a March month, which has been available for years.
So noted, and so the fact that we have a treasurer now is a treasurer
Yeah, when
in
Danielle
place,
did
you know.
it, she,
It's gonna be really helpful moving forward, but I understand improvements to it, so we have consistency moving forward is fine. And I agree with the month, I like that too.
Yeah.
We'll get to that point, at this time, we were just working through some transitional times.
it takes a lot of work, because
Yeah, it
the
does.
way Danielle did the financials was you
Yes.
run separate ones, then
Very manual.
put them into Excel and paste them next to each other to
Which
do
you
it.
can have errors.
What's
doing
that?
You can have errors doing
Oh,
that
yes.
too,
And I didn't
There
have
were
the
very
time.
few errors.
I didn't have the
There were no
time.
errors.
I didn't have any time to do that.
She didn't make errors.
Well, whatever, I mean,
She did a great job.
What?
It's fine.
So there were other errors, but I won't do that.
Hey,
And then, and I guess going further with that same subject, the April statements aren't available yet.
right, they're being worked on right now.
So it just seems like, you know, you're running a business, a cash basis business, you should get your bank
Well,
balance on the second of the month and,
We also went through a very big sewer sale transition with all final invoicing, and, you know, there's a lot to get done, but we're on it. They're getting.
and she's new. And
Yes.
she's only been here 3 weeks,
Yeah,
the treasurer.
okay, that's all.
thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Any other comments? Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we have under same subdivision lane development, Weatherstone Town Center Phase 1, resolution of approval. Jared, do you want to explain this one?
Yes, this is the Wawa plan. We received today a signed copy of the court order late this afternoon approving the amendment to the settlement agreement. So the plan is now compliant with the settlement agreement and zoning and so forth. Can you confirm that, Brian? It's all set to be approved and it's compliant with the settlement agreement?
I can confirm that, yes.
Okay.
I move to approve resolution number 22-2018 for amended preliminary final Weatherstone settlement plan approval, Weatherstone Town Center, Wawa.
That's a ton, mouthful.
That was.
I second the motion. Any questions from the audience? Harry?
Well, I noticed a Wawa in Malvern that blended in very nicely with the low, no flashy colors. It just looked okay in downtown Malvern. And are they gonna have their standard Wawa with all that gaudy stuff on it here? I just.
You haven't seen the plans for the signage?
No.
It's pretty well standard. Mike, would you consider
Does
that?
it fit in with?
Well, it's
one
not
of our
standard, it's
historic
actually
areas?
lower than standard.
But
Does it respect its neighbors?
say that again?
Does the architecture respect the architecture of the neighboring properties? I just,
Well, I'd say you can't.
historic district is what she's trying to
Right,
say.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a commercial building, it's just like Sunoco doesn't either.
No, it doesn't,
Right.
and that's way before any of us were trying to make this.
Well, yeah, but it's a commercial business, so it's R2.
But I'm saying Wawa could change its facade in Malvern. Why can't it do it?
Yeah, where's that one in Malvern?
It's on King Street,
Really?
close to Restaurant
Wawa?
Yeah.
I've been down here. Is it a big Wawa?
I don't know how big is big for Wawa.
It's on King Street, right? Where the new apartments are in?
I'm not sure where. Near the train station. So I just,
Oh, it's
why can't we get what Malvern can get? So
Well, I don't know
this
when
is-
that was built, but Wawa has
I
their,
don't either.
Wawa has their model of anything new
Well,
that they
I'm
built.
I think Mike is going to respond to your question. He's just struggling to get all the
I
maps
don't know
out.
if you've ever, yeah, here it is. So I don't know if you've ever had a rendering of the Wawa itself. We talked a lot about signage, and, I mean, we have pushed Wawa, as Neil has said in a few meetings. You know, Wawa started out with grandiose signage ideas, and we've pushed them as far as they will possibly go. This is the minimum signage package that they will allow in order to locate here in West Vincent. And we do plan on, I don't have a facade, I'm not sure that we've ever shown one, but, I mean,
We haven't seen one here.
yeah, I mean, it will be a modified version of their thing with brick.
Mike, that gentleman is what, 30 inches tall that's standing next to that sign? That's not the scale.
He is not, John.
That whole sign is what, 14
It's
foot tall?
14.6, and
Yeah, I
that's the.
think Neil said he was
that's
about
the
4 foot tall
That's
there.
the shortest they'll go. So that's 14.6 from the stone base through the
How
top.
tall is the stone base?
3 feet 6 inches.
Okay, so
He's a short person.
that guy's 4'6". Okay.
It just doesn't look right.
Let's see.
Yeah, he's a short guy.
Very short.
I think
He's
that's
a
me.
jockey.
I think that's me. I don't think that's.
Shorter than
If you look at the other side, the guy on your side's 5'6" tall, so.
Yeah, I'm taller than that. I'm 5'9", so, really 5'8", I lie, really. but
It
I
looks
used
like
to-
you could.
I used to have hair and everything. So, yeah, I mean, we're not gonna let them do their standard, regular old prototype Wawa. I mean, there have been plans and discussions with them, they have to do brick, they have to do stuff, they have to make it look attractive. It's not gonna be the first thing we've developed and then let it, cloud up the site, so.
You know, the Pulte, it's a mess.
And there could be.
And you know what, we're not even gonna talk about that.
I know.
Right?
But, so I
Because
just.
I'll tell you my opinion on that, so.
I want,
but-
I'd like to see some protection for our historic district, and it doesn't say, it's not.
Harry,
well,
there
it's-
could be other reasons for that sign that happened that we don't know, in Malvern. Mike, not to bring up a sore subject, but I think you're gonna hear this at some point in time. Come on. Someone at the last planning commission meeting asked, could any reverence or reference be given to the Ludwig's Corner in the naming rather than Weatherstone? Because it's Ludwig's Corner after all.
Well, it's Weatherstone property.
I don't remember
I
that
think-
comment, and it's not just my selective.
It was
memory.
after you
I
folks
think
left.
they might have left.
Yeah, I think,
You
yeah.
left.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
I just figured
So-
I'd throw it at you.
We, ironically, internally had been talking about whether it should be called Weatherstone too. And so I can bring it up in discussion. And what was the suggestion? That it was Ludwig's Corner?
That it include Ludwig's Corner in the name of the complex.
We
No,
would
Like
consider.
Weatherstone, Ludwig's Corner, or Weatherstone at Ludwig's Corner.
Not, it doesn't need to say, well, if it needs to say Weatherstone, you could do Weatherstone at Ludwig's
First-
Corner, but it's more.
I can't make any promise.
no,
I
but-
can tell you,
First off,
we
Mike-
could look at it.
It was brought up by one lady, and I'm sure it just would gain some traction, but I figured you're gonna hear it eventually, so I throw it at you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a suggestion that it's timely, and we're kind of looking at it anyway, so we would,
Thank you.
we would definitely
Yeah,
look at that.
she was just saying, it's so confusing around here. We have, down in Eagle, we have Lexus at Chester Springs, you know what I mean?
I
So-
know, and
so-
that's what initiated it, this whole idea of Chester Springs, and what is Chester Springs, where is it?
Well,
And
and-
it's everywhere.
And
kind of,
across the
you know,
street, they
It's a
call
lot of
that
places.
the
so-
promenade at Chester Springs.
Right,
So
right.
really anchoring Ludwig's Corner, I mean, because it's our next historic district tour is gonna be Ludwig's
They
Corner.
keep me out of marketing and architecture, but I'll bring it to them. On their desk.
Thank you.
I'll tell them,
That's
I'll
good.
tell them about it, so that's not,
Thank
it's
you
not a
for
bad
your
suggestion at all.
John.
Okay, let's bring it back on topic. Art,
Is that Wawa out there gonna be a super Wawa?
What do you mean super Wawa? It's
Well,
gonna
they
have
sell
gas.
Gasoline and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's gonna have gas.
I don't believe the one in Malvern does.
I don't know about the one about.
And that's a totally different Wawa.
Well, yeah, it's probably
We're
about
talking
50 years
What
old.
the way
It's in the shopping center, I think, is the one she's talking about.
Yeah, they're just not compatible.
Oh, this is smaller. Let's see.
Neil doesn't have nearly as much trouble with these signboards.
I know, he's a pro. Yeah, I mean, this is the Wawa building canopy. I mean, I could get the more detailed plan out, show you the square footage. I mean, I don't know if that makes it a super Wawa, but it's gonna be a Wawa with gas.
Generally, if you sell gasoline, that
Then-
puts it in the next class. Whereas
That's,
the
that
one
would
in
be.
Malvern, I don't believe does that, because that's located in a shopping center.
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that one off the top of my head, but, yeah, this will definitely have gasoline.
I just want to bring it back on topic. We're actually have a motion before us not to approve the Wawa, it's to improve or let that portion into the settlement agreement.
No, we already did that at the last meeting. Now you are actually approving the law.
And now we're actually, I stand corrected. So any other questions? We have a motion. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Thank you very
Would
much.
think you could contribute $1,000 to the tour, are you sure?
No.
I
I'll
meant
do
your
something, I
company.
don't know.
I didn't mean you personally.
Well, I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, and things like that, we address things like that all the time. If somebody wants to, make an inquiry, we can pass it along to people
Okay.
at Hancock's.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the 16-year LLC zoning hearing board application. Erica, you want to explain this one?
Sure.
I'd like to explain it.
Sure. Brian looks enthusiastic to explain.
I can
Would you like
explain
to
it to you.
explain it?
Okay, that's Brian.
Okay, come on up.
Here, let's run the ordinance.
An application was submitted on and accepted by the township on May 14th for 16 Years LLC, requesting variances from 3 sections of the zoning ordinance with relation to interior lots. It's due to the configuration of the 4 lots and the access, the way that they can be accessed from the frontages they currently have. One of the variances is required because your ordinance prohibits interior lots from being accessed from a collector road. St. Matthews is considered a collector road and the lots front on St. Matthews, so they can't even access the lots by your ordinance. That's one of the variances. Another one of the variances is requesting that the width of the access strip back to the lot be wider than what is permitted. Your ordinance has a minimum and a maximum width. They like to go even wide, a little bit wider than the maximum width, which is, your ordinance requires a minimum of 30 and a maximum of 40 feet for a strip back to a piece of property, for the access strip. They would like to make it wider than that. To make it wider, they have to get a variance, because the ordinance does not allow it. And the third variance is to allow an access strip within proximity of another existing access strip without having 4 lots between them. Your ordinance requires, if you have a flag lot access strip, 4 lots between to the next access strip, and we just don't have that. The one access strip that's currently existing dates back to the 1800s, and they'd like to put another access strip that's without having 4 lots between them. Those are the 3 basic words, 3 variances there.
These don't have anything to do with this, right? This is going to the zoning hearing.
We have to decide whether or not to support it, oppose it, or stay neutral. And I can tell you, all 3 of these provisions in our zoning code make absolutely no sense. Should be stricken from the code.
Then we wouldn't have as much fun.
But I don't see a reason to send me to support or oppose the application.
The planning commission did vote in support of the application at the reading.
Thank you.
Sarah, I have a question.
No, I was going to say what he just said. That we acknowledged the receipt and review of it and said, we have no trouble with this.
There's no motion in my.
No, this is
You
just
don't need to-
accepting
you
it.
don't
No,
have to
yeah, you
do-
don't need-
You don't do anything. You don't have to do anything
We
about
don't
it.
have to do anything?
Nope, I just was here to explain it to you.
That's what we're all about today.
Okay.
Doing nothing. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before you get, okay.
Unless you need your things.
No, I got it all right here.
Okay, you're welcome.
You're out of here.
No, I've got the next 3, next 2
Oh,
items.
okay, good.
This one is what, French Creek?
Yes.
This is the arch replacement bid award.
Yes.
Well, let me make a motion. I move to approve the French Creek Road Arch replacement bid to Veterans Construction Utility Services, Inc. in the amount of $136,140.99.
I'll second the motion.
So I passed out tonight to you a bid tabulation recommendation for the award of the bid to, as you said, Veterans Construction Utility Services Incorporated. Their bid was $136,140.99. We did receive 10 bids for this project. They were the low bid and ranged up to the high bid, which was $232,699. So of the 10 bids, they were the lowest qualified bidder. They provided all the correct information for the bid, and we have checked their references, and they came back with positive recommendations, so Cedarville recommends you award that bid.
Any questions? Brian?
Last, first one is, Erica, we can hear you fine. John, Mike, are your mics on?
Mine is.
You need to get closer to them.
I'll be eating it.
How long ago was it found that the bridge was collapsing?
Say that again?
How long ago was it that we found the bridge was collapsing?
Brian, I closed the bridge March 1st of 2016.
Okay, and when do we have an expected date of it'll be repaired?
We have not got the contract date. This is just to award the bid.
Okay,
We have to go
do
through the
you have
contract
any
documents.
idea when it might be done by then?
It's a 90-day contract for construction from the to
Okay.
proceed, but we haven't worked out with the contractor until
Fine.
notice to proceed.
But basically, we've ended up being somewhere over 2 years.
Yes.
In trying to get it done. Okay, and that's not blaming it at you, I believe it's mostly been going through the regulatory process.
We had, yes, we
And
lost.
the easements.
The easements were a long time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. We'll award this. Well, Mike already made the motion to Nutter Construction Utility Services, Inc. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Will you keep it apprised of the, and the neighbors? They should be jumping for joy, at least we're getting closer. You had a question, Sarah?
No, I just said thank you. I bet you feel relieved.
It's been a long time coming now. And this is the Flint Road and Schoolhouse Road paving bid award.
This is the bid tabulation.
I move to reject all bids for the 2018 West Vincent Road Program due to price.
I'll second that motion. Any questions from the audience?
Does that equally apply to both roads? I see that there are different situations, Flint needing a new base in some areas, and so if you separated the two roads in the bid
It
process,
applies to the main bid and all of its alternates.
so if we were to separate the two roads,
And rebid it.
would it be easier to get a good price at least on one of them?
I think Brian's in the process of doing the specs, and we'll see what comes back with the numbers. But by doing it in the alternate, you are separating.
You lost me.
You're doing it in the alternate. Together or each road. So you're getting separate prices also.
Oh, okay, that's how we did it. Oh, okay.
So both prices for each of the roads were way too high.
Yeah, I guess they're busy.
Yes, that was the recommendation. So I strictly prepared a tabulation to provide to the township, and because of the prices we received. So we're going to rebid this. That's the next thing on the agenda to do. So,
Brian, you had a question?
Yes, first off, I can't hear you in the back. Okay, and I think you basically have answered the question is, the bids were just way higher than you expected, you're gonna go and change the bidding around, trying to go and get it down, or find one that's good and one that isn't?
I would not phrase it as way higher than you expected, just higher, too high for us to accept at this time.
Fine. But you're gonna try to rearrange so you can go and then prioritize or whatever based on the results you come back?
We're going to do it really quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? And I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
and I would ask for a motion from the board to authorize re-advertisement of the bid.
Say that again?
I
Motion
move,
to re-advertise the paving project.
I move to authorize the manager to rebuild this project for the road paving.
Is that good enough?
Yes.
I'll second that motion. Any questions from the audience? Brian? You're getting some exercise tonight.
It sounds like that you're gonna go and rebid it the same as it is right now, the way that the motion is given.
That's right.
You're gonna rebid it same way as before and hopefully get different numbers. Is that,
We're rebidding the same project. but the information to put out to the bidders will be tweaked slightly due to the questions we've got and the way the bids came back in. We will tweak the bid form before it goes back out.
Okay,
So
because it
it's
wasn't,
the same project, but we're not just taking the same package and saying, here it is.
I couldn't tell that from the way
Yes.
the.
The motion is just
Yeah.
authorizing the re-advertisement for rebid.
thank you.
There seems to be some confusion on behalf of the bidders that we will try to eliminate with the next spec that goes in.
Right. So you're gonna rebid it with clarification now?
Right.
Fine, thank you.
Sarah?
I've forgotten, this is not the full length of Schoolhouse, right? It's just part of it? Which part?
The southern part.
Thank you. The long part,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay, now we can vote on it, right? All those in favor of
Aye.
rebidding? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next item is a township copier equipment contract.
Yes, I just wanted to keep this on our radar. We're still working on gathering pricing. We are gathering quotes right now. Our contract for our copiers is an equipment lease, and it's with Rothwell Document Solutions, and it was up recently, so we're on month-to-month with them right now. So we're just evaluating the options moving forward. So I'll be back at the next meeting with that.
Do you have any comments on that one? Try to save some money.
We're trying. Thanks.
Next is this is, I don't like reading this because that's not really what I meant. Next
Whatever
on
you meant, you
is a
clarify.
Sewer
Yeah.
sale proceeds planning discussion. This is on the agenda, but what I asked to be put on the agenda was to come up with a 5-year road program. For instance, Buttonwood Bridge, the engineering alone on that's going to be expensive. Maybe that should be done in 1 year, then the following year, another portion of it done, and you need time to get to, any potential grant monies for that bridge. So rather than just putting it in 2019, spread it out over 2 years, 3 years, and I'm just picking on that one. Because as you heard, we have some fund balances that are gonna pay for some of this stuff, and if we do it correctly, I think it should go into the proper fund, that it earns the optimum interest at a safe rate, or a safe depository. Anyway, so that's what I was hoping we would discuss with our 5-year road program, just to keep it going. And
Yep.
I don't think we can make any decisions on it. I think it's too important. I think we need to make sure we have all 3 board members in place
Yep.
to have it done, so.
Yes.
Anything to add? All right.
I know we need to do work on the roads, but it sounds as if you're taking money that you're getting from selling open space and you're not putting it in, you're not thinking about putting it into open space.
We're not having that
Sewer.
discussion
The
tonight.
sewer.
This is,
Okay, I'm telling you, that's what I hear.
because I think it's too important of a discussion to have it with.
I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
I don't know how you're hearing that.
We're not getting any money from open space, what do you mean?
A lot of the sewage treatment plants were part of open space.
Open
So you're-
space money was used to buy those sewer pipes?
No,
Oh.
I'm saying it was considered open space. She'll tell you.
I think
Ms.
what she's
Brayfield.
trying to say is that it's shown on our open space maps as township-owned open space, and so she's seeing it as open land that no longer belongs to the
That's a
township.
defining
And it
thing.
still is open land.
Please.
I'm just translating.
Listen.
I'm trying to understand
Hey.
what's.
Listen, it's not on the agenda, we're not discussing it. It's just it would be a fruitless discussion without burning Mike and I all together. So that portion of it would be silly, just absolutely silly. What I want to talk, and I asked you to get Bernie's feelings, but he didn't,
He's,
on the road, did he?
he's away, so we need time.
So we're just gonna discuss, I guess, what Mike and I think about the roads and wait for Bernie to get back
That's
in.
fine. Yeah, or even just an approach moving forward. I mean, I had a conversation with Brian about how to best go about that and prioritizing road and bridge projects over the next few years. And we have to think about permits, we have to think about the engineering, we have to think about all those things and move forward with that, and that can happen. We've got the road program, but it's about implementation and what it takes to get that to make that happen. And regardless of the sewer sale proceeds, that should happen anyway. I mean, that has been happening as a process with staff. Each year we're looking at projects. So, I mean, that exercise can happen. I don't know, Brian, if you have any thoughts on that.
The 2016 study that we did had identified roads and their conditions, and we've been using that study as the basis for our yearly program. We've been looking at it at one-year chunks now. Now we're going to look at it as planning for one-year chunks, looking 5 years down the road.
Exactly.
And that has not happened, so that work needs to be done now. So we will look at it in Cedarville as a 5-year layout and give you an option, ideas, but the 5-year layout will also be done in consultation with the township staff and also the board, because of laying it out of the 5-year plan, plus looking at permitting and design and acquisition for whether it's
Exactly.
Buttonwood Bridge, or if it's Jenny Lane, or any of those other Davis Lane, anything else that we have issues with structures. Some of those structures may take a year or longer to get them permitted for replacement.
And the reason that I came up with this, the 2016 plan totals, if everything was done, a little over $10 million. We can't afford $10 million, so we had to break it up, and that's why, particularly with Buttonwood Bridge and Kimberton Road and Janney Lane, they're all in excess of $1 million, in my opinion. And it takes some planning, now's the time.
And Brian, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
I printed out the road program.
Yes.
Why would a road that was paved in 2017, last year, have a rating of 3?
So the rating was done at the time of. in
Oh, so you're not
2016.
updating the ratings as
We're
you
not
go?
updating the ratings because they were a snapshot in time of the rating to show that you had done that. So the rating, even though it was a 3 when it was when it was done, when we paved it, we'd have to evaluate it again. It may not be a 10, it may be an 8.
Well, hopefully not in 1 year, it goes from a 10 to an 8.
But it may not even gotten, a 10 is a perfect road. There's very few perfect roads around in Pennsylvania anywhere, even ones that are resurfaced and repaved. It could be that even though we repaved it, there could be some issues with drainage on the sides that we couldn't address. Or there may be a bridge or something else, but.
Okay.
But
All
yeah,
right.
so we left our snapshot in time on there at 2016, you can see.
Road
it's
score,
3.
right, okay.
So the score is fixed at the 16 survey. We've not resurveyed those roads for scores.
Can we add another column for current condition? Just another column for current condition? Current score?
Well, the current score means we'd be going back out to resurvey it, and that's where you're doing that on a yearly
Okay,
basis.
you surveying it or driving down the road and saying, hey, it's a 9, or it's an 8?
We usually walk it. We drive it, we park, we walk, and every one of those.
Okay, but I guess I'm confused, because if you were there at the time that it was being repaved and engineered the plans for repaving, after the repaving's done, it should have a score. I mean, at that moment in time, it should get a new score.
But then some of those roads will then go down of where they're at from 16. You don't just carry.
Well,
it
no,
over.
I mean, that's why I want a current one. That would be going back to those older roads. But at least the ones that are brand new should get a new score here, so we're not looking at them.
That's why we put the column in of dates instead.
Well, I see the dates, I know.
Yeah, so the dates were the way of doing it, because we felt if we're bringing roads up for a score and not looking at other roads, you aren't necessarily getting a road that may be deteriorating more than the score on there.
Okay, so then,
Reflects.
that's fine. So if it's not a paved road, and it's a gravel road, and it was tarred and chipped,
We have
It
the
would-
date of when it was tarred and chipped.
okay, and that just means it's fine for,
To fine for so many years, as they'll be monitored to see, make sure the surface, see how they
I mean,
are.
is there a way to determine, like a paved road, it will remain, let's say, when it was paved, it was a 9, it will go down a level every 3, 5 years? Is there any way of knowing that, so we can keep track of it?
Typical pavement is usually 10 to 15 years.
Okay, and you have a 10,
And
you
then,
have
and then
a
in
rating of
10
10.
to 15 years, that's when you start thinking about putting in the cycle to have the surface done. Not
No, I understand.
To have the surface resealed.
But for planning purposes, and if we do
Planning
that,
purposes, if you paved it in 17, you should be fine with it, with minimal maintenance for at least 10 years, if not 15.
okay, is that a level 6 and higher after 10 years?
But it's a guesstimate, Mike, because,
Well, I know it's a guess,
Yes.
but you need something to do the planning with.
Right, but I'm saying if you paved it in 17, you were talking about Horseshoe, you shouldn't have to even think about Horseshoe Trail for probably 10 years.
Okay,
Except shoulder-
okay,
Except
that's,
shoulder
all right.
maintenance and side.
So that would
maintenance.
not become part of the 5-year plan?
No.
Okay, we won't have to worry about that,
No.
all right.
No, and even some of the roads that were chipped in 5 years, the idea is they should get you at least 7 years of
Okay.
chipped in 17. That's why we tried to go back in time and find out what roads were done when, because that'll help us in the
Right.
schedule of.
Yeah, I see that,
Yes.
2012.
Yes.
Okay,
So
good.
that was information we were able to get from the township staff to update the dates as well. So we're looking at, chip seal is typically 5 to 7 years, paving is typically 10 to 15 if it's maintained properly, if there's no issues. Now, if there starts being utilities cutting Horseshoe to run utilities across it, then you start opening the surface and having areas for
Okay.
deterioration.
Very good.
well, I went down your report and put down the first, I don't know, 6 or 8 that I thought had the lowest score.
Okay.
Anyway, and I'm sure you and I talked just before this meeting a little bit, but Flint Road and Schoolhouse, I agree, Flint Road has to be the worst road in the township.
It's close to that, and
Jamie.
and Kimberton is not doing very well either.
But if the bid comes in satisfactory, you're looking at proposing Flint Road and Schoolhouse being done in 2018, correct?
Yes.
So if I agreed with that and cross them off the list, and then go back to my 8 or worst roads, the next year, in 2019, I think Janney Lane's a disgrace, and not only that, it's just environmentally hazard to the local watershed, and it's unsafe when it washes out. So that's gotta be, in my opinion, next year's major project. And maybe you could fit in another smaller project with it.
Potentially, yes.
That would be nice. So that would be 2019. And then, that's where I start going, Art School's a bad road, Dewey's got its own problems, Hilltop, Kimberton Road, but Kimberton Road's a yearly expense all in of itself almost at a little over $1 million. But that definitely needs to be done too.
Kimberton Road is failing.
And then Shady Lane, and I gotta confess, I really don't know how bad Shady Lane is, but you have it ranked 3, which is not very good.
Yes.
So, anyway, but then, where I got off track was the culverts in Buttonwood Bridge. Buttonwood Bridge scares the heck out of me. If that bridge should fail or deteriorate and we have to impose a helicopter service to get people in and out, so we need to, even though we may not start that project, that's the main focus to fund that bridge. Do you have any idea what that bridge could cost us?
The honest answer is no, because we don't have a good plan yet of, are we going to be right where it is, have to figure out a temporary access and replace the bridge where it is, or can we use the bridge that goes downstream and cross at a different spot that we don't have right away?
Okay,
So there's a right away, you're probably in the neighborhood of 800 to 1.2, if I give you a big number.
That is a good spread, but no, that gives me a feeling, I mean,
It depends on, the further downstream we go, the longer the bridge has to get expanded. So it's more expensive because you get a longer bridge and there's more environmental issues to do with permitting. But it's a very challenging replacement, and we've started to discuss it as a staff to work towards planning, to plan it. You might be a year or 2 years to get through planning and permitting with that.
but that's the whole idea of this, to set aside funds for that, so in 2 or 3 years, that funds are available.
Yes.
I agree.
Anyway. And then how about the other culverts that are noted in your report?
I don't, other than Davis Lane, I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Okay. Because culverts can get expensive in a hurry.
They can, yes.
So we need to look at those. So we're not gonna be able to come up with a
I think we
plan
know the mission.
other to, but I guess we have to start someplace.
Yes.
Did you have any thoughts? Brian, you had one?
I'm gonna say that you guys have been tending to go and talking about the financial side of it and paying for it. The one thing that kind of fell out for me from the French Creek Road arch repair is that the permitting issues and things like that can even eat up more time. And, I'm not, digging Cedarville, oh, they didn't know this or anything, but I think you guys need to remember that besides the financial side is look at what the permitting side is, because your permitting side, it sounds like it could actually end up running longer than your time to accumulate funds to go and work on them.
That's why we rely on Brian.
Well, I'm just saying that you guys need to ask those questions and be aware of it, because, again, French Creek Road Bridge is like, we're out in 2 years. So,
Yeah, and this bridge project is even more complicated. I think we should immediately be working on alternatives for access as that bridge gets repaired. And then then you go to design, then you go to permitting. But without that first step, you can't even start these other things. And that really should be started now. If you're planning on building that 2-3 years down the road, that should be started now.
I agree.
I agree.
that bridge has a temporary support on it right now, does it not?
Yes.
Okay, that's, a sign. I know you guys did some work related to that with that, so you've got something on it, but yes, that one's gonna be an interesting project.
But Erica, you did talk to a couple of people about alternative access, and the discussions were not well received.
That's why as a board, I think you have to make a decision what you're prepared to do to get this project done.
Let me ask you, why wasn't it? What was the problems?
Just unwillingness to provide some access.
Who? The people that live there?
Property owners.
The people that live there? Fine, then we don't do the bridge.
Like,
You're stuck. God, that's
I had some frank conversations recently.
Are there any of the Buttonwood properties that reach all the way back to Cedar Mill Road?
We're trying, that's what we're trying.
But, I'm asking the question, do
Oh.
any of them abut?
Yes,
Oh, because I thought there was property in between.
there is one.
Yeah, and one of them keeps coming in to see the planning commission with the subdivision application, so.
I know what you mean, but I don't think the same.
Well, but it's not somebody who reaches through, but it might be somebody who would like to see their plan move forward.
So Brian, it sounds like you're gonna be an integral part of this, particularly with Buttonwood Bridge coming in place.
How many lots is this subdivision?
I think it's 8.
There are 12 property owners on,
I thought there were 14, but I could
I
be
think
wrong.
13, I think we
13 or
counted,
14.
yeah.
On Buttonwood itself is either 13
This
or
Yeah.
14.
this subdivision that you're talking about is coming in, how many lots is that?
Oh, 4.
4. And would they take access across this bridge?
No,
No.
they're on Cedar Mill Road,
Yeah,
but they back up to several Buttonwood properties.
Can we use that property for temporary access?
Well, again, it butts up to other people's properties to get to the
Yeah.
Buttonwood people. But there is one property that actually makes it all the way down, correct?
And that's the one that's not willing to cooperate.
correct.
Okay, we'll just send a letter to the neighbors and say when the bridge fails, your neighbor would not allow us access to therefore walk.
Love Mike.
I think Joe's talking about other alternatives.
Yeah. And I think, and it's a proper executive session discussion, because it may require the acquisition of real estate.
Through.
Well, condemnation, purchase of easements, whatever direction you want to go. That's not, as you could tell from the last project, that's not the easiest thing to accomplish.
Right.
So for me, that would be top priority because of the severity of the situation and how long it takes to remedy it.
I agree.
So the reason I'm hanging around up here was I had one short question, and it has to do with is this going to be the last public conversation on the road prioritization? And so it's not going to just be Erica and Mike
I
coming?
thought I made it clear that we're waiting for the, full board.
For the road plan?
For all, yes.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, this is a big deal, particularly with Buttonwood Bridge, and I wouldn't feel comfortable without radars up here.
Okay, thank you.
Art,
To address the solicitor's arguments here, is there a possibility?
Everybody's a nag.
It's all right, if Sarah had to do it, I'll do it, no problem.
Thanks, sorry.
To address the solicitor's problem with this, is there any way that you could get a temporary easement across there such that it would disappear
That's what we would be asking for.
instead of
We're only
having to go
asking
through
for-
condemnation and that whole thing? If it temporarily went through there,
We're asking for a temporary easement, and we're not getting cooperation. We are able to condemn a temporary easement. We don't have to condemn a permanent one. But it depends on where you locate the bridge, too. That may be a permanent easement. It
well,
depends
instead of
on-
moving it 2 miles down the stream, why don't you put it right alongside the old one? Within 20 feet.
If we get the proper easement with the proper temporary condemnation, then we can put it right where it is. Because we have an
Right,
alternative access.
but if you don't, you could certainly locate it right alongside the old one.
That's right, we're looking at that. All of
Because the closer you get to French Creek, the more problem you're gonna have with the environmental people. So if you could put it slack right against the bridge that's there,
It's much easier putting it right where the bridge is right now. That's the easiest solution.
right?
Apparently, that's going to require some kind of condemnation of a temporary easement, which I haven't discussed with the board to see if they're willing to do it or not.
All right, it's just a question on my part whether it would be a viable alternative.
Yeah, we
All right,
don't-
thank you.
It's, the only thing we're looking for is a temporary easement. We don't need a permanent one.
Hey, Art, I need your military expertise. I know you thought it was a joke when I said, what about contacting the Army Corps of Engineers and get one of those flip-out bridges? But they carry an awful lot of weight and they span pretty wide widths. So I don't know if there's an engineer battalion around here, but I think it's worth checking. Maybe they'd
Yeah.
like to do that exercise.
Yeah, we have a emergency backup plan. Sure. It's not crazy.
We haven't investigated the use of a temporary bridge. The Maybe Bridge Company, which is out of Philadelphia, is the company that designed those bridges back in World War II, and they're still in business in Philadelphia. That is a scenario for a temporary replacement, not permanent, because it's a temporary structure. We have
Thank you.
looked at that.
Do we need to declare war on Euclid so we can get this done?
Let's choose Upper Euclid.
And to answer your question about placing the bridge directly next to it, that is the existing service lines to service that entire cul-de-sac come next to the bridge, near within 15 feet of the bridge. So,
You can dig within 15 feet of it.
but the bridge itself now, if we try to put a new bridge right next to it,
Oh, why right next to it, I mean somewhere around 25, 50 feet, not 100 feet down the way.
we would have to go downstream and get an ease outside the right-of-way we currently have. That's where you would look at getting a permanent right-of-way from a property owner. We only have, the right-of-way as recorded is barely wider than the bridge itself is now.
But we can condemn a temporary easement, a temporary right-of-way, and rebuild right where the bridge is.
Yes,
well,
that would be
Do
the,
that.
yes.
let me make a point then. Mike, are you in town for the next meeting?
Yes.
And Bernie's in town the next
I
meeting?
was already planning.
Then why don't we have an executive session
Yes.
before that meeting?
Yep.
To discuss legal options?
I don't know, Joe's with that first meeting, you'll be planning.
Not normal.
Yeah, all right, we'll talk, we'll figure it out.
Now, we need to make some progress in that.
Yep, agreed.
And because that is the biggest planning
No, it's
problem.
yes. a
That's
lot
gonna
of
affect all
hurdles.
the other roads.
Are there any grants available for things like this, Brian?
We've been looking.
There is a DVRPC grant for structurally deficient bridges. And we have an engineering report I forwarded, we can look in the information and see if we can get Buttonwood to potentially qualify. The average grant award for that is 1.2 million for that project.
That would do it.
So that could be a potential funding source.
If that happens, we'll name the bridge after you.
Okay?
We just need to make sure, Brian, that it meets the specifications required of the program,
Yes.
correct? Because that can be an impediment to,
There is a requirement for the
Qualifications.
replacement of the bridge for a certain span length. And
Yeah.
the bridge currently may not qualify because it's a double span bridge, and we have to look into, drill down into
It's
all
not
the.
long enough or it's too long?
No, it's not long enough.
no.
We push it longer, can we?
Well, the existing bridge may not qualify because of the
Oh.
span
It's-
length.
the existing.
yeah.
We have to see, there's
Yes.
a whole list of qualifications, and we need to make sure we're going through all the list of qualifications that. the
Well, can we add to the bridges there now and make it longer?
I think I'd reach out to your local senator and local rep too, to see what funds they may have available, or what they can help lobby to get us funds for this.
Sure.
And I actually know a professional lobbying firm that just got $10 million for Limerick for some ramps. So if you have big projects, it may be worth your while to entertain hiring this lobby firm.
You know, you're sitting next to Mike. Can we talk about that in an executive session?
Sure.
That would be legal?
It's real estate.
Okay.
Didn't sound
Yes, sir.
like the bush.
To address what Brian said, I believe the property owner over there owns both sides of that bridge.
Yes, you're right.
So it will be a give on one side and a take on the other. In other words, we have to take some on this side, but when the old bridge is closed, he gets that back. So it should be a wash or close to it.
If you're an optimist.
So can we go any further on this tonight? Do you have any comments on roads, Mike?
I'm just curious about why hiring a lobbying firm would be real estate.
You can get that.
Joe said,
We're talking about acquiring easements.
right.
The lobbying firm was just a passing
Oh, that was
comment.
just a little bit, okay, because it just followed right on that you said you could talk about it in your next
So I'm
thing.
talking about the lobbying firm, talking about acquiring real estate.
Okay, good, thanks.
So Brian, not to put a too fine a point, you kind of agreed with my assessment of the worst road list? And the only thing, Buttonwood Bridge needs a lot more investigation, plus the other culverts also need
Yes,
to be looked at.
yes.
And if they're gonna structurally fail or... Okay. Well, we didn't get nearly as far as I wanted to tonight on that, but,
I think we know what we need to
2
do.
weeks. Okay. We'll keep you posted. What do we have left, Mike?
Public.
Public comment on non-agenda items, seeing none?
Good try, John. Yeah, this is because I feel like there was a bait and switch because there was an agenda item that is now a non-agenda item. So, I know you don't want to talk about it until all three of you are here, but one of the questions I had asked previously, or a suggestion, was that you would engage a small committee of residents to help you, once you get this huge list of ideas, help you winnow it down and prioritize. So, just wanted to mention it again.
Bring it up when all three of us are here.
Okay. Thanks. I started making a list of brainstorming. You don't want it now, huh?
Say that again?
Well, I have a list for your brainstorming session, but I'll save it.
Okay. Any other comments? Non-agenda. Going once?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Hey, John, thanks for putting on a lot of time. Seriously. It's over my head, but I'm glad somebody's interested out there.
I think there should be more interest in it all along. I'm surprised surprised you can have a meeting without a treasurer's report, and I'll bring that up sometime.
We'll get there. Thank you. We have checks to sign tonight? Joe, on that topic that I was just discussing, I'm going to rely heavily on you. Thought process on how to
I think if you condemn the temporary easement, and put the bridge back where it is, and when the bridge is built, you put it in the temporary easement, you have to really take it to. That's the logical tomorrow.
Let me turn this off.
I sent a letter to all the neighbors. We have a failing.
That'll work.
Put some pressure on.
How would that neighbor chat to the constitution?